should be cut and which way they should fall for easy stacking. He said it's amazing how much more work you can get done when you take the time to plan. Managers, are you taking the time necessary to plan your work so you can be like that old logger? And then he raised a second finger. He said there was another thing that I was doing, and perhaps you didn't notice it, but as I sat there, I had a little file, and I was sharpening my axe. He says you can get a lot more wood cut with a sharp axe. I challenge you as managers to continue doing exactly what you're doing at this very minute. You are sharpening your axe. When you take the time to plan and sharpen your axe, it makes all the difference in the world. The eighth and final point, expect what you want from your people, can perhaps best be explained with an example. I remember a company long ago did an interesting study. They wanted to determine what made some of their people successful and other people not successful. They called in a research team and they studied those people. They looked at every characteristic that might be attributable to success. They finally came with the results. They said there is one characteristic that we always seem to find in your very successful, productive managers that is not found in those that are on the other end of the spectrum. Now, if we were to brainstorm, I'm sure you'd come up with a lot of different ideas in regard to what that was. I was surprised when I found out they said your successful managers believe that they are going to be successful. Your less successful people do not believe they're going to be successful. The point here is we as managers need to expect the best from our people, because our people will grow only as great as they can see themselves growing. The greatest limitation that any of us have are the limitations that we place upon ourselves because of the way that we think. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Man becomes what he thinks about all day long." A powerful statement, but true. We get about what we expect to get. William James, one of the great thinkers of our day, said the greatest discovery of our day, think of all the great discoveries we've had, he said the greatest discovery of our day is that man can change what he is by changing his attitude of mind, by changing the way that he thinks. The Bible puts it in an interesting way. It says something like this: whatsoever a person believes in their heart, so are they. Again, we get about what we expect to get. We get out of our employees about what we expect to get out of our employees, and we can help change that self-concept that they have, that they see they can accomplish more. Does anyone recognize the name Walter Russell? No one does in the entire group. Then it was Jim Hennig who said, no, I won't do that. All these great people making these wonderful comments. Walter Russell, incidentally, was a great genius, a genius in a number of areas. He made a powerful statement, just 6 words, but it's very powerful. He said, mediocrity is self-inflicted. Genius is self-bestowed. Now, here was a genius that realized his ability to perform as a genius was in part due to his believing that he could accomplish those things. I think the best example that I've ever seen of this happened to me a number of years ago. A gentleman came up to me out of an audience and said, "Jim, I must share with you an experience that I had." He said, "I'm a high school teacher. I want to tell you about Tom and Bill. The reason I tell you about these 2 boys is that we gave all the students in the school that year a test, and I got the results back. Tom was a straight A student. Bill was a D student. They were kind of at the opposite ends of the spectrum. But when I got the results of the test, I couldn't believe it. Tom, the straight A student, scored in the lower 1/3 nationally in terms of his basic intelligence. Bill, on the other hand, the D student, scored in the upper 5%. Then the teacher went on. He said it was my job to call the students in individually and explain the scores. He said when I shared that with Tom, Tom said, "Lower 1/3? He said, that doesn't make sense. He says, ever since I can remember, my parents have been telling me how smart I am. My teachers have been telling me how smart I am. I thought it was easy for me to get A's. I had no idea I'm in the lower 1/3. He went out rather disillusioned with a greatly changed what? Self-concept of what his mental ability was. And then the teacher said, you know what happened to that boy's grades over the course of the next semester? They began going down and down and down because he had changed his self-concept. Now, he said the reaction was just the opposite with Bill. When he called Bill in, Bill said, upper 5%? Me? He says, you know, my parents have always told me how dumb I am. My teachers have told me how dumb I am. I thought for me to get C's would be good for me. I had no idea I'm in the upper 5%. And he too walked out of that office with a tremendously changed vision of what he could accomplish. And what happened to Bill? His grades began going up and up and up. And the teacher said, I checked with all the other teachers that had these two boys, and they had never seen such a dramatic change. What was it based upon? It was based simply on the way those boys perceived their own ability to get the job done. I thanked that teacher. I said, this is a great example. He says, wait a minute, I'm not through with the story. I said, what happened? He said, well, at the end of the semester, the company that did the testing notified us that they had made a mistake. They had switched these two boys' scores. You see, it's not so much what happens to us in life or the basic talents and abilities that you or your employees have, but how we view those talents and abilities. Do you see how you as a manager can help raise the self-concept of those people with whom you work? And just like this graphic example with those two boys, they will increase their performance. I challenge you to expect the best out of your people. Communicate that to them. Expect that from them, and they will provide for you the best. It's not so much what happens to us in life as how we view what happens to us and the self-concept that we have as individuals and as managers.